In the last 2 days, there have been two different predictions on how India's monsoon will be this year. Yesterday, private agency Skymet said we will have a below normal rainfall with 94% of regular rainfall or the average rainfall expected. Today, the IMD, that's the Indian Meteorological Department, says we will have 96% of the average rainfall, that is normal. So what does it mean and why is this so crucial? Now, making the whole situation even more complex is a looming threat of something called the El Nino factor that threatens to play spoil sport as far as the Indian monsoon is concerned. Both Skymet and IMD, by the way, agree that El Nino impact is very likely to be seen this year. Both differ, though, on how harmful it may be. So first, let's begin with why we should pay very close attention to these monsoon forecasts. A monsoon that is poor impacts kharif crops negatively at a time when the sowing in March has already been disrupted. That's bad news for India. If agricultural output goes down, it impacts rural demand and hence the economy. Lower output of crops means food prices may go up, inflation spikes further, and the RBI will have to increase interest rates again. So as you can see, a lot hinges on a good monsoon as far as India is concerned. What's playing spoil sport is something called El Nino. So let's come to what El Nino is. It literally means little boy in Spanish and refers to the warming of sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, which causes a decrease in the atmospheric pressure above the ocean. It involves an increase in temperatures of more than 0.9 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 5 successive 3-month seasons. And generally, its impact is that it decreases rainfall in India. It occurs every 2 to 7 years, but importantly, the El Nino effect is expected in India this year. Now, when you're talking about El Nino, you also need to understand something called La Nina. La Nina means little girl in Spanish and causes the opposite effect. That's the cooling of the sea surface temperatures in equatorial Pacific Oceans. It causes strong high pressures over the eastern equatorial Pacific and causes a drop of 0.5 degrees Celsius or more below a 30-year average for at least 5 successive 3-month periods. It generally, in its effect, increases rainfall in India and occurs every 2 to 7 years. But the frequency of La Nina is lesser. Now, the important point to note is that for the last 4 years, India has been going through La Nina and now will get into El Nino. What does that really mean? Now, ahead on the show, I'm also going to be speaking with the GM of IMD, Mr. Mohapatra, and understanding why his predictions are different from what Skymet said yesterday. Meanwhile, I have with me Mahesh Palawat, Vice President of Meteorology and Climate Change at Skymet, Vijay Sardana, Senior Agri-Economist and Policy Expert, and Santosh Mehrotra, Senior Economist, joining us. What we're trying to understand on the show today is what is going to be the impact of a possible deficient monsoon. Mr. Palawat, let me begin with your take because we've had 2 sets of data, 2 consecutive days, and quite different in their outlook. Now, if you look at it on the face of it, Skymet says we'll have 94% of the average rainfall. IMD says 96%. But your take is that this is below par. They're saying it's normal. Is this just a matter of how you look at the data?
See, Tamanna, the difference is just 2%, and IMD has predicted 96%, that is lower side of normal, and we have predicted below normal, that is 94%. But 2 words, below normal and normal, has a vast difference. If we say normal, that there is a sigh of relief among the people. If we say below normal, that is worrisome. But as IMD has already predicted that, yes, there will be risk over some parts of the country, particularly West Central and Northwest India, parts of Northeast India. However, rain will be sufficiently, you can say, normal or above normal over South Peninsula and hilly regions of Jammu Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, parts of Uttarakhand, and some parts of Punjab. So there is not much difference, only 2% difference is there. So it may be the perspective of 2 agencies, but more or less the forecast of both agencies is on similar lines. Yeah.
Okay, but it's not really, because like you said yourself, Mr. Palawat, there's a huge difference between normal and below normal.
Yes.
Once again, do you think it's a matter of perception, or, looking at the glass half full versus half empty? Because both the predictions are pretty clear that El Nino is coming.
Yes, El Nino is now, since last 3 years, there was La Nina, and in 2019, there was El Nino, but due to a very strong IOD, Indian Ocean Dipole, the monsoon rains were above normal in 2019 as well. And since last 4 years, we have seen normal and above normal rainfall, but this year now we are in the ENSO neutral condition, and gradually El Nino will develop. It will be evolving El Nino. And in the beginning of monsoon, the impact of El Nino will not be very high. So that's why we have predicted the June rainfall will be 99% of LPA, and thereafter in the month of July it will be 95% of LPA, and August will be 92%, and September 90%. So in the second half of monsoon, we expect that El Nino will start taking toll, and the rainfall it will start depleting. Yeah.
Okay, let me go across to Santosh Mehrotra to just understand why this is so crucial. And I must note for our viewers who've tuned in, this is not a typical primetime discussion, but we've chosen to focus on this because it's extremely crucial right now how India's monsoon pans out. The IMF has just reduced their outlook of our growth for this year and the next. They've upped their inflation targets, and a good monsoon becomes very, very important. Mr. Santosh Mehrotra, what are the concerns as far as an El Nino impact and possibly a less than optimal monsoon goes in the Indian context?
Well, the impact on agricultural incomes is going to be significant if the monsoon doesn't work out as we would want it to work out. And agricultural demand is obviously a very significant part of total demand in the economy. 45.6% of the total workforce of our country is dependent upon agriculture. So clearly their incomes have to remain stable rather than fall if we want all demand in the rest of the economy for other goods and services to remain decent. So your concern is an appropriate concern. What really saddens me in all of this is that still after 75 years, only about half of our total crop production is irrigated, and the remainder is rain-fed. And much of southern India peninsular India is actually rain-fed, which is where most of the lentils are grown and where the oilseeds are also grown. And because rain-fed agriculture has been relatively neglected in our agricultural strategy, we've long been in a situation where we've been importing dals, meaning lentils and pulses, and we've been importing oilseeds. Now, how long is government going to allow this situation to continue? On the other hand, we have irrigated agriculture where there is excess utilization of water. Why is the strategy so imbalanced? In other words, the government should really be thinking of subsidizing sprinkler irrigation, drip irrigation in areas which are irrigated and in areas which are rain-fed. But in areas which are rain-fed, there has to be much greater investment in watershed development, in rainwater collection, and so on. All of this has not happened. And every year, Tamanna, you have this program and we have this discussion, what's going to be the effect of El Nino and what's going to be the effect of El Nina. I mean, how are we going to become Atmanirbhar in oil seeds
if we are still dependent? Let me come to Vijay Sardana. Vijay Sardana, what are the concerns? And it's also a little difficult to understand why there are such disparate predictions on something like monsoon. We'll also play out what the accuracy rate has been. Frankly, neither Skymet nor IMD, and no offense to either agencies, I'm going to be speaking with IMD also in a bit, neither of them have a 100% rate of accuracy. In the last 5 years, it's actually been off. There is not 1 year, when there has been a exact prediction. I'm showing you from 2018 to 2023. It just depends on who is closer. So I know it's tough, but these are the numbers and we should put them out. One question, why is there such a lack of accuracy? Secondly, isn't it time we become more resilient as an economy to the vagaries of the monsoon?
Tamanna, first of all, good evening to you and to the viewers. See, your first question is important, that why there is a difference. See, please appreciate that monsoon is a natural phenomenon. Whether it is Skymet or IMD, both have their set of data. They have their own algorithms in which they calculate. And then there is also computation and the requirement what is there to do the forecasting. It is not a mechanical exercise. So what we have to look at is the quality of data, the quantum of data, and as you go more and more into the situation, you may be able to improve your algorithms. But when you have a situation like climate change or natural catastrophe or climate change impact on the overall ecosystem, the historical data may not remain that accurate because of changing ground reality in the system. So expecting 100% correct forecasting through modeling and from the historical data is somewhat which one can hope for, but generally does not happen, number one. That is why you will find that all the forecasting is in a given range. Now, what is important here is that range is acceptable or not. Here, what you are finding is that deviation is, one agency is saying 94%, another is saying 96%. What we are taking plus minus 4, if I take 100 as a normal, plus minus 4, it is considered as normal range. But here adding another 2% dimensional variation is, you can say, playing on the border. But the good part is that both agencies are giving forecasting on the lower side. This is actually giving one comfort that both the agencies have a data and the forecasting model which are acceptable. If they have an entirely opposite, yes, then it is important for both the agencies to work on their own data and also algorithm, why it is having a opposite directions when it comes to outcomes.
Absolutely.
So this is a mathematical statistical
they have been, no, you're right,
which
Mr.
we have to
Sardana,
look
they
at.
have been largely in line, but the real concern is not just what the final rainfall figure is, whether it is 96% or 94%. It is the where and how, and intensity of rainfall that is also what has mattered and has caused chaos and havoc in the last few years, where you have days of floods and then days of drought in the same season. I want to thank all of you on this section of our conversation, but I've also spoken with the IMD chief who's made the prediction today. Take a look at that conversation. Just a day after private agency Skymet said that we could have lower than expected monsoon, the official word is out from the IMD. Now, the IMD says that the monsoon is expected to be normal, but what is important is that the IMD as well is pointing out to the impact of El Nino. Now, what exactly is El Nino? Why is it a matter of concern, and why have we had divergent forecasts in 2 consecutive days? To speak on some of these issues, I am joined now by the IMD DGM, Mr. M. Mohapatra. Mr. Mohapatra, thank you so much for speaking with us here at the Times Network. Let me begin by getting details of what forecast has been put out by the IMD today, especially in light of the fact that an El Nino impact is expected to be felt over India this year.
Yeah, thank you. So as per the forecast issued by India Meteorological Department today, the country is experiencing a normal monsoon year this year. And quantitatively, the rainfall during June to September 2023 is expected to be 96% of the long period average. The long period average, which is based on data of 1971 to 2020, says that country gets about 87 centimeter of rainfall during 1st June to 30th September. So this year, as per the forecast, it will be 96% of 87 centimeter, which is roughly about 83.5 centimeter. But in addition to the forecast for the country as a whole, we have also brought out a forecast for different regions of the country, and that is in terms of the above normal, normal, or below normal probability of occurrence of rainfall during the monsoon season. So as for that forecast, major parts in South India, West Central India, Eastern India, and Northeastern states are expected to get normal rainfall or above normal rainfall. Whereas the West Central India and plains of Northwest India are expected to get either normal or below normal rainfall activity for the season as a whole. And if you look at the forecast, which is issued by India Meteorological Department, that is based on a set of best dynamical models. And these dynamical models are climate models developed in different parts of the world.
Okay.
And based on that, we prepare a multimodal ensemble forecasting system. And performance of this multimodal ensemble forecasting system, which was introduced in 2021, has been quite good. In addition to that, we also have our previous statistical ensemble forecasting system. For this year's monsoon rainfall, there is a good consensus between the dynamical forecasting system and also the statistical forecasting system. Both suggest that country is expected to get a normal rainfall, which is about 96% on long period average.
So, may I ask you, sir? Yesterday we had Skymet's, prediction, and we also spoke with them, and they say that we're going to get 94% of the normal rainfall. And they say that's deficient. You say it's 96% and you say it's normal. Just for a very lay person to understand, is this a matter of seeing the glass as half full or half empty? Because the figures are very, very close. What is the differential? Is it a subjective analysis of the data? And this is why we have two different kind of forecasts, one day after the other?
I do not know about the technology used by them. I will talk about IMD, and I have explained that. But with respect to your specific question about normal or below normal, India Meteorological Department classifies the seasonal rainfall over the country into 5 categories. The rainfall is said to be normal if it is 96% to 104% of the long period average. It is called as below normal if it is 91 to 95% of the long period average. And it is called above normal if it is 105 to 110%. If it is more than 110% of the long period average, it is called excess rainfall. Similarly, if it is less than 90%, it is called as deficient rainfall. So therefore, the number in whatever category or bracket is coming up, accordingly, it is decided as normal or below normal rainfall activity. But I want to say the justification why we have given for normal rainfall, whether it is physically accurate or physically reasonable or not. If you look at the various large-scale parameters or phenomena which influence the Indian monsoon rainfall, certainly it comes to everyone's mind that is El Nino. And I'll tell you, at present, the La Nina condition, which was prevailing till February, has changed to the neutral conditions. Neutral means it is neither La Nina nor El Nino. El Nino, in general, is not good for monsoon, and La Nina is good for monsoon. But quantitatively, if I tell you, out of 100 years, if you've got El Nino years, in 60% cases, rainfall is adversely affected by El Nino conditions. But in 40% cases, it is either normal or above normal, even if it is El Nino. So this year, we have predicted that we are expecting the El Nino condition to develop during the monsoon season, which may be around July. So therefore, the impact of El Nino is expected in the second half of the monsoon season, if at all. So there is a strong relationship between the El Nino condition and the rainfall in the second half of monsoon season. During 1951 to 2022, there has been 15 years when El Nino has prevailed. And out of that 15 years, 6 years are those years when rainfall has been normal or above normal. So it is because El Nino is not the only governing parameters which decides the rainfall activity over India.
Okay, so
There
that's
are many
interesting.
other parameters.
That's interesting to understand this. So there's no need to be afraid of El Nino like a big villain. It might hit in the second half. And, you know, I'm just putting this down very, very simply because these technical terms need to be understood by the people who are watching. And you know, monsoon in India has economical impact. It has agricultural impact. It's a very important factor. So you're saying El Nino is likely to come in the second half. Not necessarily that El Nino means there will be poor monsoon or, you know, drought-like conditions.
Yes.
So we'll have to wait and watch. Now, I want to ask you a broader sort of question, Mr. Mahapatra, that even in the last 4 years when we've been seeing La Nina, and that means above normal monsoon or rainfall overall, we have been seeing erratic rainfall. So very heavy in some days and no rainfall for a certain period. And that has wreaked havoc with crops, with weather patterns, with the cycle. What do you put that down to? Are we now looking at the impact of climate change on the Indian monsoon just beyond the La Nina and El Nino factors?
You are correct. As you told, there has been the impact of climate change on Indian monsoon rainfall. If you consider the total amount of rainfall for the country as a whole, there is no significant change over the past 100 years. But when you consider the rainfall distribution over the different parts of the country, there are certain changes. For example, the area which gets less rainfall, like West Rajasthan, Saurashtra and Kutch, they are showing a tendency of increase in rainfall activity. And the area which usually gets more rainfall, like northeastern states, Bihar, Jharkhand, Southern and West Bengal, they are showing decrease in rainfall. That means there is a bipolar impact of the climate change on the rainfall over the country. And other point what you told, that is also true. It is not only in India, but the entire tropical belt. There is a changing pattern in distribution of rainfall. The number of heavy rainfall days are increasing and number of light rainfall or moderate rainfall days are decreasing. That means if it is not raining, it is not raining at all. If it is raining heavily. That means rain is occurring in a shorter period. When the rain occurs in a shorter time period, certainly the rainfall rate is high. And that high rainfall rate leads to the more runoff, soil erosion, and less percolation. So groundwater recharge is getting less because of the increase in frequency of heavy rainfall. At the same time, the dry spell is increasing because number of days of light rainfall or moderate rainfall is decreasing. So therefore, you can expect both floods and droughts because of this variation of rainfall during the season itself. So it is specially felt whenever there is a low pressure system. When a low pressure system, for example, develops in Bay of Bengal, and ordinarily about 13 low pressure system develops during the monsoon season. In association low pressure systems, it is found that there could be increase in 10 to 15% in the intensity of heavy rainfall. So therefore, it can cause the floods in the riverine belt. Also, it can cause the flash floods, the cloudburst-like events, and also the urban floods.
Context of